We now look at how we can organize larger Ruby programs into files and folders that we can run. So a Ruby program is basically a sequence of Ruby statements and expressions in a file, and the typical file extension for Ruby programs is .rb. And you can use Ruby to start the Ruby interpreter with the given file name, then Ruby loads the file and executes it. So, for example, let's say we had the Middle-earth block in the file meb.rb, then we could use Ruby followed by this file name to execute the block software. Now, a non-trivial application will typically be distributed over multiple files, so it's common to have a folder structure like this, where you have a root directory in which all the files are that you want to be part of your program, and then you simply have the individual classes in separate files. So for instance, we would have the author class in a separate file, entry, block, scream, warning, holler, and MEB, which could serve as the main entry point into the Middle-earth blogging application. Now, how would we write meb.rb so that it would have access to the classes defined in the other files? We would start meb.rb with a number of require statements. So we would require the author.rb file. Note that we don't give the extension here. And this would bring in the class definition from the author.rb file and make it available in meb.rb. And the same here with entry, block, scream, and require warning. And then we can use all of the classes we have now required or brought into the MEB file. And here we simply create a new author. We then create a new block and we push a few entries onto this block. So you can see that the meb.rb file is simply a sequence of Ruby expressions. The first ones here are require expressions that bring in the contents of other files. And then we simply have assignment statements or push expressions as we've seen them many times before. Now, how would you start this program? You would move into the folder, the MEB folder here on your hard drive, and then you would launch the program by giving the following command: ruby -I dot and meb.rb. What this does here, this -I dot, is it places the current directory onto the load path for Ruby. The load path is the set of locations where Ruby looks for class definitions or files that it can require or include. More precisely, the load path is an array of directory or folder names in which Ruby searches for files to load. You can find out the current load path if you execute this command at the command line. You call Ruby, the Ruby interpreter, and the option -E, where E stands for evaluate, causes the expression that follows between the quote symbols to be evaluated by Ruby. And then it will print out whatever the evaluation yields. So you start the Ruby interpreter with this and execute the expression between the quotes. Now, the expression we give here is $:, and this is in fact a global variable that contains the current load path. So from the command line, you can identify what your load path is. If you want to push a particular folder on top of the load path, you can use the -I syntax here, or -I option, followed by the folder location between quotes that you want to move to the front of the load path. And then you can specify whatever file you want to execute, and it will be searched for in the load path and then executed if it exists. In a typical text editor, you would organize your MEB folder, the Middle-earth blog folder, with the files author, blog, entry, holler, MEB, scream, and warning. So you can see here I have organized them in the various tabs in my editor, and the author.rb file contains only the author class. Similarly, for the blog.rb file, the entry, holler, scream, warning, and MEB file. And in the MEB file, you see that I require the other files, the author, blog, entry, scream, and warning files, and then I use these classes that I acquired through the require statement and create authors, a blog, and multiple entries. And if the blog already contains entries with a particular text pattern, then I create another warning, and then finally I print out the blog. At the command line and within the MEB folder, I can now run the MEB program. I specify the load path to include the current directory. So let's see what happens. So we see the various entries that are added to the blog, and finally we see also the warning by Gandalf.